What industry is way more shifty than people realize? Trucking. The margins are razor thin, and so everyone is trying to nickel and dime each other constantly. The drivers lie to their dispatchers, the dispatchers lie to the brokers lie to the clients. All of this for like $50 to $100 sometimes. Some will give their drivers time limits that they can't make without speeding, but make speeding tickets the driver's responsibility. And I've also heard on the internet that some install governors that prevent you from going over a certain speed limit. Then there's the laws on how long you can drive and how long a break you need to take before driving again. Those often don't get followed. Dietary supplements. It's gotten better, but there's still a lot of half-truths and whole lies. Not all that long ago, it was seriously like the wild, wild west. Dentistry, particularly dental chains like Aspen Dental, Bright Now, Affordable Dentures, Coast, among others. When I worked for Aspen, every office had to meet its financial goal at the end of the month. Oftentimes, this meant exaggerating a patient's treatment plan and scaring them into unnecessary, expensive surgeries, like a 15-year-old getting a full mouth extraction and put into dentures. My comment is based on my experiences in corporate dentistry, especially Aspen. There are plenty of excellent dentists who work at these chains, you just have to find them. My issue is mostly with the business model and the high-pressure salespeople with no medical backgrounds whatsoever. Just do your research, ask questions, get everything in writing, and be proactive. If you do these things, you'll be fine. I don't want my comment to scare anyone away from going to the dentist, which is an important thing to do. I once worked for a dentist who told us that everyone who walked in the doors has gum disease. Everyone. And the assistants would compete to see who could get the most people to agree to an oral cancer screening. Are you 25 years old and never smoked a cigarette or drunk alcohol? Great! You absolutely need an oral cancer screening because Shannon really wants that Starbucks gift card. Shady billing and insurance claims, straight-up fraud, charges tacked onto bills that weren't discussed, like a $150 electric toothbrush that you never agreed to purchasing. I ran far away from that place and never looked back. I interviewed for Affordable and got an offer, but it's the same racket. God, you'd think that the one person you want not to be shady is the person sticking sharp metal implements in your mouth and then pausing to quote you exactly how much it's all going to cost when they see the problem. We're all one checkup away from being taken hostage and held at knife or dental point tip for our money. The tattoo industry isn't necessarily shady, but there are some major gaps between good artists and crappy ones. I've worked with straight-up smackheads who I wouldn't let draw on me in marker. Yet year after year they find work in shops. Always check the portfolio and talk to the artist, and if they seem sketchy or disinterested, you nope the frick right out of there. Even the portfolio might not be a good indicator. I went to what I thought was a reputable shop, pre-Yelp and Google reviews. It was recommended by my ex, who had some gorgeous work on her. I was new to the area, and he had great work, so I went with it. Went in, and the guy at the counter set me up with a tattooist. The guy had a great portfolio, and we set up a date for me to come in the following day. It was a smaller piece, pretty simple. Got it done, and it looked great. For about a minute. It took a couple of days, but that thing began to heal, and it was a blown-out piece of trash afterwards. I went back to the shop, and the guy that set me up with the tattoo guy was there. I showed him and complained, and he's like, "Yep, Friday was his last day. We let him go because we've been getting that complaint." So those motherfrickers knew that he was bad and didn't care and put me into an appointment without him knowing it was his last day. That's the one tattoo I've kind of regretted. The credit card industry. There's a whole high-risk segment of the industry dedicated to preying on young people, old people, or people with bad financial histories and issuing them cards at extremely high interest rates. If you have a crappy credit score, be wary of any credit card offers you get. I read that the supplement industry lobbied hard in the 90s to make sure that Congress didn't pass an act which would require the FDA to actually look into whether a supplement is safe, effective, or reliable. They even showed ads on TV using the whole government overreach angle. Unfortunately, the law was never passed. So now the supplement industry can just churn out crap that improves heart health or helps memory, and don't have to have those statements undergo any kind of verification. One of the individuals who wanted to pass regulation for the supplement industry also dealt with the tobacco industry and was quoted saying something along the lines of, "The tobacco industry was a piece of cake next to the supplement industry." Marketing and advertising. We can track and buy so much data on people to directly place specific ads. I can track the locations of cell phones and send ads based on the places you've physically been, even if it isn't directly related to my business. This may seem fairly obvious, but the entire real estate industry is awash in overseas and laundered money in the United States, to the point that several markets would totally crash without these buyers. Everyone knows, and no one cares. Olive oil. The amount of counterfeit olive oil is insanely higher than you think. You have a higher chance of buying olive oil that's been cut than buying real olive oil. Education. People are constantly trying to find ways to line their pockets instead of focusing on the students. And I say this while working for what I consider to be one of the better school districts in my state. Funerals and caskets. Nothing like preying on grieving survivors to try and sell them the most glorious, satin-lined mahogany box to plant their loved one in the ground. As a quick PSA for those of you who want to donate your body, my family has been using medcure.org for full body or non-transplant donations. Usable organs and tissues go to hospitals and research facilities. Anything remaining is cremated and the ashes are either distributed at sea or returned to the family. All of this at no cost to the donor. $0. My mum's cremation, documentation, and return of ashes alone cost us over $2,000. As a child of depression and lifelong penny pincher, she would have been frickin' furious about that. My brother and dad had registered with Medcure, so for them, we got 0 cremation expenses, no stress about what to do immediately following their death. We were much happier to spend money on the memorial event. If you're not bound by spiritual or cultural death rituals, or prefer a frugal lifestyle, or want to benefit scientific research, look into non-transplant full-body donation. And I guess thanks to the honorable funeral industry folks who aren't gouging folks for every last penny. People who go in for a traditional burial method will almost certainly appreciate what you do. Listen, future family of the narrator, I don't care what you do with my handsome rotting corpse after I've vacated my own cranium. Do whatever's cheapest for you, or preferably whatever lets you get a bit more money to take care of yourself after I'm gone. Sold to a group of corpse bride reenactment perverts? Sure. Black market organ dealers? Great! Just make sure the price is right. It does not matter to me at all. The fashion industry. They rely on third world factories to make their products and pay them a pittance. Then they sell their products on for 10 times the price they pay the salary for their staff and factory workers. Then they burn, yes, literally burn clothing that doesn't sell because they don't want luxury items flooding the market and therefore lowering its value. There was a really good documentary I caught on Netflix called The True Cost About the Fashion Industry, specifically the low-cost throwaway fashion culture that exists in most first-world countries today. It was really eye-opening to say the least. I never sat down and considered the significant environmental implications of the clothes we buy, and it definitely got me thinking more about my personal consumer habits. There's a reason why you can get those cool, nerdy screen print t-shirts for about $7, and those reasons are scary. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Knowledge of this isn't nearly as common as it should be. Mobile video games are literally designed to be frustrating instead of fun. There was a South Park episode about this not too terribly long ago, which I found to be incredibly accurate. Sadly, it didn't make quite the same splash that I'd hoped it would, given that quite a few people still aren't aware of what's going on. See, a great many mobile titles make use of mechanics that are put together with the intention of nurturing habitual behavior, frustrating a user, and then offering a slightly more enjoyable experience after money has been spent. The monetization model is created first, and then the game elements are built around it. This tactic has proven to be a more profitable model than actually offering entertainment, to the point where some companies take very careful steps to ensure that their games don't accidentally end up being fun. That sounds like satire, I know, but it's actually true. As an example, EA released a mobile Sims game and holy crap, it was bad. The game was fun to play, but the only hang-up was that everything your sim did took real-life hours to do, meaning if I wanted to do a certain mission that required me to, say, send my sim to work, I would literally send him to work and wait 8 real-life hours for him to come back. But you could speed it up using real money. The breaking point was when they had special events that allowed me to get an exclusive accessory from my town that I really wanted. I started doing the missions required to get it, and right when I had one mission left, I ran out of time. The event ended. No frickin' joke, you had to devote all of your free time to this crappy frickin' game to get your reward, and if you so much as went an hour without making your sim do the next task, you were screwed unless you coughed up $5 to make Bob the Sim take a crap. I deleted the game and never looked back. That kind of formula doesn't work for any game, and I don't want to have to wait several real hours to do something in the game. I want to play the frickin' game and not be cut off right when the action begins. Imagine playing the new Red Dead Redemption, except right in the middle of the shootout, the game cuts you off and says, "You must wait 5 hours to continue, or give us your actual hard-earned money so you can play the game. Otherwise, catch you later then." Frick that. I'd rather slap $60 on the checkout counter and just get the full game so that I can play it on my own time. The rest of this Am I the Genius video will automatically unlock in 33 minutes and 3 seconds. Spend 89 YouTube bucks to speed up? I mean, to be fair, you have to wait what feels like 5 hours to do a lot of Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm on my second playthrough of that game and I'm still not sure whether the whole real-life simulator aspect of the game is a strength or just really annoying. But yes, to return to the main point, mobile games have been cheap, nasty scams ever since they just cut away from the model where all they did was show you ads. Collections. Yes, I know most people assume they're shady, but I don't think most people know just how shady. There are clear laws in the US defining what a collections agency can and can't do, how often they can contact you, what sort of pressure they can apply, what they can threaten you with, among other things. These laws are not ambiguous, they leave little or no wiggle room, and yet low-rent agencies violate them all the time. They'll buy debt for pennies on the dollar that's past the statute of limitations, meaning it's not legal to collect on it, and then start calling the debtor and harassing them for payment. They'll call debtors and threaten them with legal action, tell them that a process server is on the way to their house, that the IRS is going to audit them, that their wages will be garnished and assets seized. All blatant lies meant to scare the person into paying up. And I'm not talking about scammers from India here. I'm talking about legally registered collection agencies right here in the US. So how do they get away with this? Because the vast majority of people don't know their rights. They're already dealing with the stress and shame of being deep in debt with no way to pay it off. So if someone who sounds authoritative calls them up and lists all of the terrible things that are going to happen, they just assume that's correct. And the few times that someone knows enough to fight back, the worst that happens is that the collection agency pays a fine of a few $1,000s. That's usually covered by their liability insurance, and even if it isn't, it's just the cost of doing business. Small price to pay for the cash they're raking in. And if they really get slammed, they can just close up shop and reopen under a different name. It's a really sleazy business with a lot of bad actors. I don't know about most people, but the home security industry is pretty shady. Shades. No, really, most of the branded ones are owned by a single company called Luxottica. It's a monopoly. Worse, they own a crap ton of prescription frames as well. Imagine if you needed a wheelchair, but the only people who made wheelchairs were Ferrari and they started at 40 grand. Specifically in the US and sporadically in other countries, academia. Yes, it does function like an industry, again specifically in the US, and it can get really, really damn shady. Public research-oriented universities are mostly above board, but the further you drift away from that, the shadier it gets. Diploma mills are a well-known phenomenon, but there are also plenty of legitimate or semi-legitimate establishments offering continuing education or distance education diplomas that are both expensive and not really worth the paper they're written on. Labor relations at most universities, including reputable ones, are okay, but becoming increasingly messed up. Part-time, dead-end teaching contracts are increasingly popular, and their conditions for the employee range from crappy to Dickensian. The US agriculture industry. It's illegal to record videos or take pictures in slaughterhouses, yet in the UK, it's required by law. Car sales. I install computers at car dealerships. The salespeople don't pay attention to me while I work because I'm not a customer. I overhear them talking so much crap about all their customers to the point where it's sad. It seems like they're always trying to rip people off. Blood donation centers are shady as frick. The source? A guy who's a former branch manager here. One Blood and other blood buses are super shady. Employees are trained that every donor is a hero and that they're saving local lives. Horse crap. The blood is sold overseas to weird companies. The pint of blood a donor donated is worth several $100s depending on the day. The donor gets a t-shirt that we printed by the millions for pennies on the dollar. Blood centers make mega money, lie to donors, and treat employees like animals. Yikes! I wonder if this is better monitored in other countries outside the United States, because the narrator knows a lot of people who give blood. Here's hoping. You won't believe how shady the clickbait industry is. Okay, before I actually get into this topic, I need to clarify a couple of things. Yes, there's really a clickbait industry, and yes, it's largely distinct from the world of online periodicals. I work for an outlet that straddles the line between the two, meaning that we actually create and publish real and original content, but we occasionally have to employ some less than desirable tactics in order to stay afloat. Said tactics include allowing questionable sites and services to advertise on our pages, putting vague but attention-grabbing headlines on fairly mundane pieces, and repurposing older content for use in new articles and videos. Now, let me tell you about the actual clickbait industry. There are sites, thousands upon thousands of them in fact, which work as kind of redirect networks, for a lack of a better term. You've probably stumbled into one of them in the past. Something mildly interesting shows up somewhere that you frequent, usually promising a story that seems just slightly shocking at first glance. If you click on the link, you're brought to a page that features dozens of these stories, each of which is accompanied by a thumbnail that not so subtly hints at something more intriguing. Clicking again will bring you into another such index, and then another, until sometimes, if you're very lucky, you'll be brought to a legitimate site which is unwittingly paid to advertise via the wrong channels. More often than not, though, your final destination will be a poorly written, single-paragraph description of a photograph that was purchased from a paparazzi website, which is once again saturated in ads. Okay, so what's the big deal, you might be asking? They're just pulling revenue out of stupid people. That's true, and that's one of their primary goals, but it isn't the only one. See, each of those clicks gathers a little bit of information, all of which is assembled into a kind of profile. Said profile is then used to target specific articles and ads at the people making their way through this online labyrinth, dangling tailored bait in front of their noses. Depending on the network, that bait may include political propaganda, misinformation, and even outright scams, with what a visitor sees being largely determined by what they've already said in what they want with their choices thus far. Here's an example. A person visits a website and they see a story about a young, female celebrity having a malfunctioning wardrobe. They click the link, which brings them to a site that resembles an adult thumbnail page from the early 2000s, albeit featuring celebrity gossip, technology news, and a host of other topics. The promised article about the famous exposed chest is included somewhere on the second or third line, in between one about a real-life lightsaber and one about an anti-aging technique. Our hapless visitor, having decided that the lightsaber sounds more interesting, clicks on that link and gets brought to still another thumbnail page. This continues for another jump or two, and at the end, the algorithm behind the site knows that it's dealing with a male in his early to mid-20s who lives alone and prefers dogs over cats. The further down you go, the more insidious it gets, and if our wayward internet wanderer then goes back to the original site where this all started, he'll see a new advertisement waiting, this one having been tailored specially for him. You might think that you're immune to this sort of thing. Maybe you assume that your ad blocker protects you, or maybe you're just too shrewd to fall down the rabbit hole. Still though, doesn't that lightsaber-induced wardrobe malfunction sound like something you should see? In short, the clickbait industry is even shadier than you think. Click the link in the above comment to find out how. Car dealerships are the worst. In a lot of places in the States, you can't order directly from the factories and legally have to buy through a dealership, and the dealerships will take a big cut of that. Also, in my state, the big car dealerships successfully lobbied to make buying a car illegal on Sunday, and although I can't remember how it worked, the unofficial reason for it was because it would hurt smaller dealerships. Thankfully, I think most people realize they're pretty shady. The construction industry. You'd be amazed how much contractors try to cut corners and do shady crap to save on money. You know that joke about people standing around watching others work? Yeah, they're actually working too, specifically making sure the guys doing the construction aren't cheating. In a world without construction regulation and enforcement, your house gets a big frickin' crack in it due to crappy soil work, and now you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that fixed. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.